A cold wind raced across the training grounds of Camp Pendleton, carrying with it a mix of dust, sweat, and the scent of diesel from the trucks parked nearby. Inside the large GP tent where a group of young Marines had gathered for chow, the atmosphere was rowdy, loud, and full of laughter. It was the kind of noise that came from men and women who'd been running drills since dawn, muscles aching but spirits still high, their banter echoing off the canvas walls. At one of the tables sat Private First Class Mason Hale, tall, broad-shouldered, and always ready with a joke that was either incredibly funny or just stupid enough to make everyone laugh anyway. He had been in the Corps barely 8 months, which made him fresh, reckless, and always eager to prove himself in front of the others. He was halfway through telling a joke when the front flap of the tent opened and an old man stepped inside, slowly, carefully, as though each movement required thought. His gray hair was tucked under a simple cap, and his jacket, faded, frayed at the sleeves, looked like it had been worn through decades of winters. He carried a metal cane in one hand, its handle dull from years of gripping. The chatter in the tent quieted only slightly as he shuffled forward, scanning the room with pale blue eyes that held something none of the young Marines could place at first glance: calm, depth, and an unspoken weight. Most of them assumed he was just another veteran who wandered near the base sometimes, maybe someone brought in for a guest talk or a ceremony. But the old man didn't seem interested in attention. He simply looked around, as if searching for someone or something familiar. Mason nudged his friend, grinning. "Yo, check it out," he whispered, smirking. "We got a new recruit." His buddies snickered, and a few glanced toward the old man, curious. Some Marines sat straighter as a show of respect. They could sense something was unusual about him. But Mason, always the loudest voice in the room, cupped his hands around his mouth and called across the tent, "Hey, Grandpa, what's your rank?" A couple of guys elbowed him, hissing, "Bro, chill," but it was too late. The words had already shot through the tent like a round fired accidentally. Impossible to take back. The old man paused mid-step. The entire GP tent seemed to freeze for a breath. His eyes, those pale, quiet eyes, lifted and locked directly onto Mason's. Not harshly, not angrily, just steadily. A young sergeant stepped forward, ready to intervene, but the old man raised a hand gently, stopping him. He walked toward Mason's table. Every eye followed him. His cane tapped the ground in slow, measured beats. When he reached Mason, he didn't speak immediately. He just took a long breath, as though inhaling memories. Mason shifted uncomfortably. Suddenly the joke didn't feel funny anymore. "My rank?" the old man finally said, his voice calm, but carrying a weight that silenced even the cooks in the back. "So, I haven't had a rank for a very long time." A ripple of confusion passed through the younger Marines. Mason forced a grin, tried to recover. "So, you were enlisted or what?" Before the old man could reply, the tent flap burst open again, and Master Gunnery Sergeant Leon Briggs, one of the toughest, most respected men on the base, stormed inside. His expression changed the second he saw the old man. His boots froze mid-stride. His jaw dropped. And then, unbelievably, he snapped into a perfect, rigid salute. The entire tent went dead silent. "Sir," the master gun said, voice trembling, "we weren't expecting you this early." Mason's eyes widened. "Sir? What the hell?" The old man nodded gently. "At ease, Leon." "At ease? Leon?" Mason felt the blood drain from his face. This wasn't some random veteran. This was someone with a name, the Master Gunnery Sergeant, said like it belonged in history books. The old man finally turned back to Mason. "You asked about my rank," he said softly, pulling off his cap. Beneath it, faint scars lined his temple, scars that looked far older than Mason himself. "My name is Samuel Hawthorne. I retired in 1978. My rank," he paused. The whole tent seemed to lean closer. "Was Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps." A collective shock swept through the room like a silent explosion. Several Marines straightened reflexively, spines stiff, chests out. Someone dropped their fork. Even the noisy heater in the corner seemed to quiet. Mason's mouth hung open. The Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps. The highest enlisted Marine. The living legend whose name recruits heard in boot camp stories but assumed had long passed away. But he was standing right there, calm, humble, and disappointed. Samuel Hawthorne studied Mason, not with anger, but with something far more unsettling: understanding. "You remind me of myself at your age," he said, lowering himself slowly into the seat across from Mason. Loud, uncertain, too busy proving I belonged to understand what belonging really meant. Every Marine in the tent listened, frozen. Samuel continued. "I joined the Corps at 17. Lied about my age. Went to Korea, then Vietnam. I held dying men in my arms. Men who joked just like you. Men who were scared just like you. Men who would have given everything for the Marine next to them." Mason swallowed hard, feeling smaller with every word. Samuel tapped a finger on the table. "Respect," he said quietly, "is not about rank. It's about recognizing the weight someone carries. You never know who stands in front of you, or what battles they've already fought so you wouldn't have to." Mason's throat tightened. "Sir, I didn't know." "Of course you didn't," Samuel replied softly. "But that's why you ask with humility. Why you listen before you speak." Master Gunnery Sergeant Briggs cleared his throat, eyes still lowered. "Sergeant Major Hawthorne is here to speak with battalion staff tomorrow, but he wanted to walk through the enlisted tents today, quietly." A few Marines looked ashamed. "But," Samuel added gently, "I'm glad I wasn't quiet enough. Sometimes lessons need to be loud." The tension softened. Samuel reached across the table and rested a frail but surprisingly steady hand on Mason's forearm. "Son, don't let this embarrass you. Let him prove you. The Corps already sees something in you. Make sure you honor that." The sincerity in his voice broke something inside Mason. "Yes, Sergeant Major," he said, standing so fast his chair scraped loudly. He saluted, posture sharp and perfect. Samuel smiled. Better. Then his gaze swept the room. "All of you, when you wear that uniform, you are the sacrifices of thousands who came before you. Carry them well." The entire GP tent rose to their feet in unison, a wave of discipline and reverence overtaking the casual energy from before. The salute they gave him wasn't required. It wasn't ordered. It came from respect, pure, heavy, earned respect. Samuel nodded once, humbly, then turned and slowly made his way toward the exit. As he reached the flap, he paused and looked back. "One more thing," he said. "Don't forget to take care of each other. You never know when the Marine beside you will be the one carrying you home." The old man left the tent, his cane tapping rhythmically against the ground until the sound faded. No one spoke for nearly a full minute. The silence felt sacred. It was Mason who finally broke it. "Damn," he whispered. "I messed up." Master Gunnery Sergeant Briggs clapped a heavy hand on his shoulder. "You learned today. Better to learn now than when it costs you something." Mason nodded. He felt something shift inside him. Not fear, but purpose. True purpose. That night, the base felt different. Training didn't change, the commanders didn't change, but the Marines did. They talked quietly about Samuel Hawthorne, about the legend who walked among them, about the life he lived, about the battles he survived. And Mason, sitting on his bunk, replayed the moment over and over. The calm eyes, the steady voice, the unexpected kindness. He opened his notebook, a habit he picked up in boot camp, and wrote only one line: "Earn the uniform." The next morning, as the sun rose over the range and the smell of fresh coffee drifted across the camp, Mason stood outside the staff building, waiting. When Samuel Hawthorne finally stepped outside after his meeting, Mason snapped into a perfect salute. "Permission to speak, Sergeant Major?" Samuel smiled warmly. "Granted. Thank you," Mason said simply. "For everything." Samuel nodded once. "Go make me proud, Marine." Months passed. Mason trained harder, pushed farther, stopped slacking, stopped joking at the wrong times, and carried himself with a pride that wasn't ego. It was duty. His fellow Marines noticed. His drill instructors noticed. Even Master Gunnery Sergeant Briggs noticed. Then one afternoon, after a grueling field exercise, Briggs called him aside. "Hale," he said, "I don't know what that old man sparked in you, but keep it burning. Marines like you become leaders." Years later, Mason stood in the same GP tent, but this time not as a recruit. He stood as a sergeant, boots planted firmly, voice steady as he addressed new Marines. And every time a young private tried to act tough, or joked too loudly, or forgot the weight of the uniform, Mason told them a story about an old man. A cane, a moment of silence, a lesson he would carry for life. And somewhere far away, in a quiet home overlooking the ocean, Samuel Hawthorne sat in his rocking chair, watching the waves roll in. He smiled, knowing he had passed on what mattered most. Not medals, not stories, but legacy. The Marine Corps way. The old way. The right way.